Vanavond allemaal. Oh, really good Dutch, right? Yeah, it's by the joke. I don't know if everyone already knows me, but I'm now helping organizing at PHP Amersfoort. My name is Renato, and yeah, let's start. So first, a big thanks to all the sponsors. First, Pink Web Applications for the nice environment which you are now, and the drinks afterwards the talk. Server Grove for hosting our server website. Ingewikkeld. Yeah, Ingewikkeld. Sorry. Yeah, I'm gonna learn that. Maybe in the end of the year I can do it right. for the Meetup account. O'Reilly for giving books for reviews. If you don't know what is that exactly, we can talk about it later. And JetBrains for the license on the raffle. And today we have Dennis de Greef. Is that good? Yes, that's good. Nice. Talking about, could you pass me the Holy Grail? And that's it.
So, good evening. This talk is called Could You Pass Me the Holy Grail? For those of you who don't know me, this is me. I like combining technology, seeing the potential of it. I'm mainly a software developer as a job, as a hobby, but I also find joy in system engineering and security, and once in a while some hardware hacking. And I really like to learn and teach stuff by asking questions, asking the right questions, like at socials or on IRC, Twitter, things like that. Because they always give you a different perspective on how people look at stuff, which is, I think, really nice. So I have a bit of a disclaimer. This talk might be opinionated or exaggerated or cliche, but I hope it sparks some thought and provides insight, and try to see how it links to your own experience, because every company is different. This is also the kind of talk that you don't normally see. Normally it's about a bit of technology or how to do certain things, but I think I wanted to take another approach on this. So I have no idea if you will like it. Please let me know during the questions or during the social, because I'm really eager to hear what you think about it. So we are all looking for solutions. We face problems every day. Some of those solutions are simple. We've encountered those problems before. We know how to fix it. We have some more experienced colleague who knows the answer already, who can show you, oh, this is how I solved this problem in this way. But not all problems are as easy as asking just to pass the salt. Yeah, when looking at solutions, sometimes they're right in front of you, but without proper thought, you shouldn't pass them just around as such. So I'd like to start off with showing a side project I've been working on last summer. Some of you may have already heard me talk about it. I'm quite enthusiastic about it. I call it Microservices at Home. So it combines my interests in hardware, in software, and in architecture, and combining different technologies. And I decided to write a blog post about this. Not that my blog is widely read, but I had some comments which are really nice. People using the software, so we think like, oh yes. And I ended up doing an on-conference talk at the PHP Benelux conference last January. And I was surprised, but I won the on-conference, so I'm a speaker this January. So I'm like, yay. And the project taught me a few things, and a lot of those things I reflect back in this talk. So yeah, it was actually one of the reasons that I wanted to do this talk. So let's start off with this microcontroller. It has a few inputs and outputs. You can hook up to other hardware. So the GPIO things are like digital. You can turn them on, turn them off, and hook them up to electronics. So anything that has like a button or like a sensor that can read a value, you can hook it up to one of those. You also have bigger models with more GPIO ports. And to the right, you see an antenna for the Wi-Fi. So it's really amazing to me to see, and it's just a few dollars. It's amazing to see what kind of potential these kinds of technologies can bring us, because they bridge two worlds. from the old school hardware to our whole software engineering, cloud-based world we now live in more and more. The problem with this, though, is that Wi-Fi is not really a standard for things like home automation. So integrating it with other solutions like the Philips Hue lighting system, some of you may have, or in Dutch we call it click aan, click out. It's on the 433 megahertz. It's just like a remote. I want to turn this on, turn this off, and just a power plug to enable that. They're all different protocols. So we need how can we let those talk to each other? We need some kind of abstraction for that. And I decided to use a message queue for that. So if you look at this picture, there's a general message bus in between, and Z-Wave and Zigbee are two home automation protocols, also wireless. You can do some UDP. The Philips Hue has a REST API. I recently got a nice Bluetooth controller I want to integrate. And tailing a log file is also something I want to monitor my Wi-Fi commands for when my phone joins or leaves or stuff like that. So how do I integrate those? Well, we have to look at this specific point. Because how do we couple that message queue with the different protocols? Well, I started off writing a few small scripts and took the approach of using microservices. So normally in a monolith is a big application which connects to databases, third-party APIs, maybe 30 of them differently, accesses the file system. It's just one big, massive code, which is okay-ish, but I thought from this picture, it has a really clear bridge between the bus and the actual protocol I want to talk with. So I stripped them out into smaller pieces. And they do one thing, and they do one thing well, which is also known as the Unix philosophy. So there are a lot of messages going over that bus because this device has registered. I read this value from like my electrical meter at home or all those kinds of events. And I thought, I'm at conferences. I see some blog posts about event sourcing. That's pretty cool. All the events that happen, that you store them. So I started doing that. And I have a small little service. It's 50 lines of code. And that's all on GitHub. And people are actually using it, which is really nice. So I started storing those events in MongoDB. Because I've also seen talks about neural networks and machine learning. So I thought, okay, if from the start off I could save these events, I won't do anything with it because storage is cheap. I can later on apply some algorithms to it and see if I can find some repetition in it and make suggestions. Oh, on this and this day, every time you come home, do you want me to switch the light on every time on this day of the week? I could do things like that, or see, okay, I now see a power surge. Are you sure you're not leaving devices on anymore? And those are just a few thoughts on top of my head with what I can do with that. I also run them in Docker on my Raspberry Pi. It's also nice to play with the Docker concept with the side project. And I have a permanent OpenVPN connection with a virtual machine so that stores all the big storage things, local aggregations, stuff like that, because else in no time I'll run out the flash memory, broken SD card of my Raspberry Pi, and I'm almost sad, have to order one, have to, etc. So, after half a year, I was trying out stuff, maybe a few hours in the weekend, here and there, talking to some people, gathering some ideas, looking at other people who took similar approaches. So it was a half a year of work that I put into it. And I gained a lot. But effectively, the only thing that I could do up until this point was turn my lights on using my smartwatch with my voice, which is pretty awesome. I don't have a webcam, so I can say, demo effect, oh, my phone's dead, but I can say, turn the lights on, and it will put it here because it has a dictation service and stuff like that, and it will enter it into my system and my lights will turn on. Trust me that it works. I can show you maybe later if you ask me, but this is awesome. The only thing though is that I did this because I found it fun. if I were to do this because I was a startup, because I wanted to make money with this, because I thought, okay, this is like an abstract protocol and this will integrate everything from the Internet of Things, which is really booming now. So I can make loads of money on this and I should like really get onto this. But yeah, I could have also done that in 50 lines of bash. So this talk is actually about why I took this approach, and I'll finish off with the reasons why. Let's first start off with an example. Let's say we have a new startup style-ish web shop, and that sells kids' toys. And it's brand new. So the startup has found some developer or a few developers. It's a small team, and they've done a new sprint, and it's finished, and they deploy it. So everything is fine, but early the next morning, the developer walks in and rushes in and says, yes, so we did the deploy last night, and I asked my nephew to test the website, and he was clicking through it, and it didn't really make sense because it looked all messed up, but he's so good with computers. How come it looks so messed up with him? And the developer is like, I don't know how this happened. Works on my machine. So next question was for the manager, what browser is he using? So he's like, okay, he's going to ask, I don't know, well, using Firefox. And the developer still has no clue where to look for. So obviously, that Firefox isn't working is a pretty big issue. So the development team starts working on that. Well, if somebody's working on that, you'll start debugging, you'll have to install Firefox first, you'll ask a few colleagues, have you seen this behavior before, or do you know what this is? So 8 hours later, excluding the time it took to ask colleagues about have you seen this before, or distracted them, got them out of the zone, there's a code deployment. And everything is okay again. Everything is zen. So my question to you, was it worth the development time? Yay, nay? It's like a difficult question, right? Because you know I'm going to do it the other way. If we look at the stats, let's say that this little red point here is Firefox. They didn't check it. So what's the target group? Target group is parents with children wanting to buy toys. Maybe children like ages 8, 12, something in between, looking online, what kind of toys do I want for the next holiday season. But the nephew was 20 years old, and he uses Firefox, while the rest of the target group uses any other browser that came with it. And it costs a lot of money, especially when you're in a startup phase. So before you start panicking and think everything is broken, the trick is we as developers think Firefox is a big browser because we use it together with maybe Chrome. Those are most of the popular browsers in the technical area because they are better than the stuff that got shipped with the operating system because they don't know what they're doing, right? So yeah, know your audience. Check the stats before rushing off that stuff is on fire. And this, like the disclaimer said, may be a bit exaggerated, but I find it happening a lot on smaller things. You think something is a big issue, but you can't really tell why. It's your gut feeling. So try to see, of course, if stuff is on fire, don't go diving into stats for those 8 hours, but at least try to see how much the impact really is. Because this could have been done more easily. There could have been more pressing issues for the very small percentage that used Firefox as visitors on the website. So I have another example. Let's say we want to implement a new feature. And this new feature would be like a better searching functionality on the website. So during the daily stand-up, we are talking about, okay, we want new search functionality. How will we implement this? And one of the developers says, oh yes, this morning I read something on Hacker News, and it's the newest, latest version of a database, and it solves exactly our problem. So for this sprint, it's very easy. We don't have any problems anymore, just solutions. Only thing is, this graph is the skill and the effort of time. So nobody was familiar with the database. It took some time. So at the end of the sprint, it's done. See any problem with this? Operations? Yeah, yeah, could be. If they, for example, chose another piece of database software or something that developers are more familiar with, they could have maybe done it in a week or half a week. But it's very cool to use that new database technology. That's one. But you were close.
And another thing, they have a second skill now to maintain.
Yes.
And that's
Yes.
skills bad.
Yes. And this small team in this phase of the startup knows it by running that project. But if the startup grows and people leave, other people join, it's a big, big problem to get them up to speed as well. Especially if that piece of technology doesn't grow so much that the whole world is using it. So that's also one of the problems with it. But you were right. One does not simply deploy to production with this. There's a lot more to it. Have we thought about clustering? Does anybody even know if the software can cluster? If it uses some proven technology underneath for clustering? How about monitoring? Those new technologies are often from developers at big corporations. And that's not a bad thing, because since they are at a certain scale, they come across certain problems which at that scale requires specific need. So they start it. Either the developers don't get any time for it, so they start it as an open source project in their spare time, or they are like a big Facebook, Apple department that they say, okay, this is a really good idea, let's put a whole team on it, because we've got a whole draw of those. But if you are the biggest user of this software in load or scale, since it could be your one benefit for being the solution compared to your competitors, you're going to run into issues that cannot be found on Stack Overflow because the whole world is not using it. So is it worth the risk to try something new when all your people know something else already and they have a deadline to meet? They met the deadline, but they could have added more features in the same sprint. And what does it mean for the developer in the trenches faced with the task of solving a specific problem, that there are dozens of confusing choices and no obvious winner? Because this time somebody read it on Hacker News this morning, but on the other hand, if you're looking into a really specific problem, you'll come across a lot of these problems. And there are a few examples that I found myself in facing that choice. One of the things was running HHVM. And I love HHVM for its functionality. But I have no idea if the project will survive if Facebook starts to pivot, starts to do other things. If they think, okay, this isn't working for us anymore at this scale, so we're going to abandon maybe even a part of the language, or we're not going to support this anymore. If you rely on that, then you have a problem. And it's often something that's overlooked. Because if the project, and I don't know, I haven't really thought about it, but this was a concern of me. I'm not saying that all the devs are from Facebook, but if not, for my feeling, 50% is from the community, then I don't know if the project will survive if Facebook starts to decide to work on something else. So that's one of the concerns I do when considering HHVM, and that was before PHP 7 was released. This is one of the things that is often overlooked. Who here uses Docker? Few. In production? my next question would have been on multiple machines. But yes, Docker. I really like Docker. I like Docker's mindset of having packages, and it's the same as a compose or log file. Once you say, okay, this is what has been tested, then you can deploy it to production. Every instance is the same. Well, as long as you run the same PHP version, but it tries to solve the problem that you can test a whole file system layer and have like one specific version of an application, launch it anywhere, and it will scale and stuff like that. So I used to go to a lot of, well, I still do sometimes, but I used to go to a lot of Docker meetups to see, okay, I'm playing around with this. I really like the concept, but how do I do storage? Where does my storage come from? How do I run databases in Docker? Should I run databases in Docker? I'm not sure. I mean, Docker is all about you have to abide through the 12-factor app, 12-factor app, I think it's called. If you're not familiar with it, ask me afterwards. I can show you some links for it. But it's like your services have to be stateful so they can be scaled. That's the thing you want to do. But a database isn't stateful. Actually, its reason is to contain state. So do you run a database in Docker? How do you do networking? If you have multiple data centers, do you have to run like a VPN link in between? How do you do the load balancing, failovering, stuff like that? So I really like the mindset, but especially when Docker was pretty new, those problems weren't solved. And even nowadays, they're mostly solved, but they still have to get their battle scars here and there in my gut feeling. So there are a lot of people working on that, but I see a lot of people during those meetups, and their managers, their customers are saying, yeah, if we don't do Docker, our competition will be way ahead of us. So go ahead and do Docker. I don't care, just do Docker. So we won't run behind. And I see that a lot. So my intention there was just to see, okay, where does this technology take us? Because it could have been that Docker was just a real hype and then died and something else went up. I mean, Rocket is an alternative to Docker. I don't think most of you have heard it. Well, you have heard of Docker. So Docker is, I guess, here to stay more, but you didn't know that back then. So I just wanted to see where the community is taking it, how the problems are solved, and how that mindset works, so I can use that knowledge when I eventually decide to want to run Docker in production on multiple machines, if it solves my problems. So during that development, later we are still on the Hacker News database. It's time to upgrade. The version we were using was 0.2. Sometimes nowadays versions don't really say that much anymore. I mean, I have no idea what the major version of Chrome is nowadays because it changes every day, but it has its reasons. So we're on a pretty new version, and the newer version fixes a lot of bugs that we've encountered, has a lot of new functionality. Oh yes, we were using this, and this is really the feature that we were missing. Has some performance fixes, but there are breaking changes everywhere. So at this point in time, when we want to go to the newest version, maybe even the older version has a security vulnerability. If we want to do that and there are breaking changes, who gets to spend the hours on that? We have to, right? It's all an effect of the choice we made back then. Who's the owner? Who's the owner of that decision? Who's responsible for making those upgrades to the newest version? And especially during a startup phase, time is money. So you're losing a lot of it based on one choice that somebody read Hacker News on a single morning. And yes, it solved all their problems. Probably faster than they would have done it in another way, but they paid the price. And it worked fine in dev. So it's an ops problem now, right? So this is actually what's happening then. You have development, and they're throwing the problem over the wall to operations. And it's called the wall of confusion. And the wall of confusion is often, funny enough, physical walls. So if you have like the development team and the operations team is on a different floor, or they're in a different room, You'll have those issues. Because you just ship them off. You like send an email, open some chat, might even walk up to them, but then just explain the problem. Good luck. So even if you peek around the wall, we actually want to break it. So that's another buzzword, and I think you all have it in your head now. Oh my God, DevOps. But in my opinion, and that's just my feeling, is that there are a lot of opinions about the word DevOps. There are a lot of people with different views on what DevOps actually is. I know this is not DevOps. This is not DevOps, although I do get a lot of ads, things, hire DevOps, do DevOps tools. With this, you'll be able to scale. So there's a lot of marketing involved because it's a buzzword. Same counts for Docker. Same counts for similar things. And like I said before, the reason why those people were walking around on the meetup groups trying to see, okay, how do I solve this problem? How do I solve that? Is because they've been told we need to do Docker. But why have they been told? They have the fear of missing out. So if I don't do this, everybody will run past us and we're doomed. So the management is feeling like this. And what they actually want to do is this. But you can't just buy DevOps, at least not in my definition of DevOps. Because in my definition of DevOps, DevOps is a mindset. And it's a mindset which is primarily focused around communication. How many of you have been to talks or read blog posts about domain-driven design? Domain-driven design is actually trying to listen, in a very basic concept, trying to listen to what the problems of the business really are. And how you do that is by trying to grab hold of as much and as long of domain experts as you can. Because they know what the problems are that they're facing. They know what drives the business. I mean, you can guess, and if it's a technical product, you're more likely right in your guess, but they know. So you want to get their time as much as possible to be able to extract features, really see what the problem is, and be able to automate that. This is a famous one. See this website, this product? Cool, newsprint, I want a button here. Okay, sure. Here's your button. Ah, thanks. Okay, but it doesn't do anything. Okay, why do you want the button? What do you want it to do? Often people with requirements, and a lot of people actually, have already solved the problem for you, they think. And I don't want to say that the solution is not a good solution, but they just come up with a solution instead of the real problem. You have to ask for what the real problem is. And I'm not sure that it depends a bit between 5 and 7 times you have to ask why before you get to the real reason. And since people are willing to think with you, with all their domain knowledge, their domain expertise, we as software developers are the problem solvers. We do this every day. We are trying to do this. Our brains have wired up to be able to be good at this. So we have to ask why, and there's not enough focus on the why. There's too much focus on the what and the how. So what we want to achieve is this circle of continuous feedback, operate, deploy, integration, build, plan, build, continuous integration, deploy, operate, and continuous feedback. But how can we do that? We can only do that as a team. And as a team of people of very different domain experts. I mean, you can have domain experts which are an expert in the business, but taken out a different view, you're all domain experts. Some people with a specific front-end job or a back-end job, we're all experts. Oh, that person is good with databases. If you run into database performance issues, that's the one you have to ask for feedback. He can just tell you instantly. And if we have such teams with different kinds of expertise, very diverse teams, we can focus on the bottlenecks. And those bottlenecks are the only things that's like, okay, the load is high. We need to have like not one server but multiple, or a lot of things go wrong here, or customers go through the order process, but they stop somewhere. Okay, but as a dev, okay, but why is that? Let's ask some marketing person to look at the statistics. Now we can both look at those statistics because we both have different angles to look at a certain problem. So what problems are you facing that I can help you with? Those teams should be able to ask each other those questions. In my opinion, this is what DevOps is. Not only between developers and operations, but every different principle, because we're all domain experts from a different view. So back to the toy store. I've got a fun problem for you. Actually, 3 problems. So, backups. They were in a very early stage. They require the database to be down to make proper, clean backup. Sure, this is how it is. And effectively, we have 60% uptime. Second problem. 50% of the customers stop at the last step of the order process. Third problem. The SEO is suboptimal and the site is found on page 2. Any takers on this? Which is the top priority? There is no right or wrong.
I would say the second one, because it impacts your business.
Yes.
That's the first thing we're doing, yeah. But the second one is, I guess you have a point, yeah.
Sorry, what was your point?
All do.
Yeah, all do, of course, but there's a certain priority. We can only use our time once.
Depends on why. If they stop the process because the website is down, because they're making a backup. Yeah.
Yes, but the question is, when is the website up? Because if it's the 40% that it's down, if that's during the night, if it's during the day,
It could still influence your SEO.
oh yeah, okay. I tried to see it as different problems. It could influence your SEO, sure. But even if it was during the day, if somebody had the brightest idea to make the backups during the day and have the website online, but it's live in the evening, that's the top priority, to at least switch that. It can still be 60% uptime. That's the least of our concerns, but at least do it during the night.
But it still depends.
It depends, of course. Oh,
Your customers
yes.
are both in Europe and in America.
Oh, yes. If they're worldwide, it really depends. Yes.
So your context is completely missing to answer this question.
Yes. And the missing context is actually why I'm asking these questions. So you start thinking about them. And I'm not saying that you're not. I mean, I get the great questions back. But these questions are often overlooked, in my opinion. It could be that you're doing this right. It could be that you're doing this partly. It could be, I don't know. Like I said in the beginning, I want you to see, okay, I have these experiences. How can I link them? Which one is similar? What can I learn from that? And how can we teach each other and learn from each other the mistakes we made compared to these examples? So yes, it depends. That's totally true. I wanted to end with that slide. I didn't. But so in what order do you fix? We went through this. And from my DevOps part of the talk, I'm not sure if there are really experts. There are people with a lot of experience on a certain topic, but I don't think there are really experts, people that know everything about a certain subject. And it's also always a current view of solutions to current problems. If you take like legacy projects, you'll start cursing at it, you start whoever wrote this, etc. But it could have been the best solution at the time. I work in a code base that went live in 2009. We're not doing all the hip new stuff. We're trying to be able to maintain it and see how we can migrate off stuff. But yeah, Symfony 1 was maybe out just to give a bit of a context. There weren't really good ORMs. Yeah, well, Propel was around, Doctrine was version 1-ish, I think. So it really depends. If you inherit a legacy project, assume that it was the best solution at that time. And I think experts only have enough experience to provide most of the questions or otherwise have encountered them, that would be an expert. I went to a domain-driven design meetup maybe a month ago, a month and a half. And on the way home, I thought of a certain sentence and I tweeted it. I thought it would be matching here. And that's including experience. So someone's personality is a projection of their individual history and interpretation of past events with the context of event sourcing. So if you take like an event store and eventually after all the events you have a certain state, it's same for people. All the events in your life make you the expert of different things, one area more than the other, but they make you a unique expert. You combine different technologies. I think I once said to somebody, if you're playing guitar, that matters. The way you learned how to play patterns on a fretboard alters the mind, how you look at problems, how you process problems, how you see patterns in things. So that's an expertise that you can't see, you can't know, but people can be better at thinking in a different way because they, for example, play guitar. And the number of programmers doubles every 5 years. And that means at any time, half the world's programmers have less than 5-year experience. I took this from Noxie's presentation, by the way. But I think it's really, really, really nice. So you often have the question, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And you often make a relative guess. But your guess is wrong. So you look at your current situation, and you look at yourself 5 years ago. The difference between that, I could apply it here, but that would be a linear change. So if you would look at technology, and this is a scale for technology to grow from the 1900s to 2100, from technology being able to have all human brains at this point, somewhere between 2050. If it's exponential, how can you see where you are in 5 years? Especially with all the new technology coming, especially with a lot of more developers who write more software, who write more solutions to specific problems. How can you see yourself in 5 years? You can just act upon your past experience and trust on that and be eager to learn. Don't think that you have the right solution, because the solutions you've learned were only the proper solutions at that time. They could still be, but at least they were at that time. So just try to see what other people's experiences on things are. So yeah, that's the law of accelerating returns, and technology innovation happens at exponential tempo. And own experience, you can keep up by using your own experience and experience of those you trust. And question your knowledge. Don't abandon it, but just question it once in a while. I work with interns now and people starting new at the company. And especially the juniors I like, because if they ask me questions, maybe about object-oriented programming or some design patterns, for me it's muscle memory. If I see this problem, and I'm not saying for all, but if I see a certain problem, I know, okay, I fixed this multiple times before, and it's muscle memory, I type it. I don't even know why I'm doing it anymore, but I know that this is a solution to this problem. And if they ask a question about this, why don't you do it this way or that way, I learn. And I really like the smile on their faces when I'm saying, okay, you're right. You know, they see me as like the knowledge and knows it all and is going to teach me anything, but it was the best solution at that time. And the more you know you don't know. And I think meetups and conferences are not about this is what you should use, but rather they're about these are solutions to problems. Should you encounter them, take a look at them, because I found those really valuable. I've played around with them. This is the overview. This is the complete summary of what you can do. And some problems are often encountered, some not. Testing, for example, solves a lot of problems. So it's easier to be explained, to be integrated, to shown value, but to completely pull over your software project to event sourcing, CQRS, and it's a big step. You can take some values from it, but it's a big step. So if you start a new project where it really solves the problem, sure, go ahead. But I would suggest that you first start on the side, doing some test projects, trying to see how this technology really works. And yeah, it's easy to do on side projects to be able to start from scratch. There are no real deadlines. There's no urgency of uptime. So my microservices at home. What problem was I solving? Wanting to know what effect a microservices architecture has on coupling and maintainability. If I have hundreds of different services and they listen to one single message going around the queue, and I had to refactor, that not all 100 would break. They're all unit tested. They're not integration tested. I moved the complexity from the monolith application to the integration part of things. Something I really learned from this. It was really valuable insight to be able to work with this. And the real problem that I was solving was not being able to switch on a light at my watch. That was only my motivation. These are two really good books, I think. So I'll share the slides. Some of you know them? Read them?
Really good.
Yeah. Questions? If you'd like to share experiences during the social, because it's on camera, so it's all fine. I just want you all to see this process, this thing that I wanted to make a talk on. It's a bit of a different talk than the technical talks, but I wanted to have the link to your own experience, to question again, to. Okay, cool.
No questions, contributions, cliche phrases?
Yeah. We can still talk during the social. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you.
Oh, and please, just give me feedback during the social or on Joint-in, or rate me on Joint-in for my talk. It's the first time I'm doing this talk.
I was going to say, it's not your first talk.
It's not my first talk, no.
Liar.
I misspoken.
Thanks. As he said, please give feedback. You can do anonymous, just kidding. I just talked to him directly as well. I would also like to thank Paul for recording everything. You can check out later on the YouTube channel, and it's even more professional now. 2 cameras, amazing. So thanks, Paul. And